Good afternoon and welcome to the latest installment of Treasure Coast Business Disaster Relief and Recovery, brought to you by the Virtual Business Recovery Center and the Corporate and Community Training Institute at Indian River State College. This webinar is sponsored by the Florida Small Business Development Center, hosted at IRSC, and the Economic Development Council of St. Lucie County. You may put any questions and comments in either the chat room or Q&A area of this virtual meeting room found in your Zoom taskbar. Today's topic, how to maintain a positive mindset in an uncertain world, by CCTI instructor Patrick Arcement. Thank you for joining us today, Patrick. I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll get started in just a minute. Okay, thank you very much. And let me know when you can see my right screen, please. Do I need a switch?
Yes, you're in presentation mode right now.
All right, better. There we go. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, as we discussed, today's class is one that's near and dear to my heart. I believe that culture is everything. And in the business world, if we are not maintaining a positive mindset amongst our folks, amongst our consumers, amongst giving them that positive experience, as well as us being in the right frame of mind, traditionally everything else falls apart. I have worked with companies that have had bad cultures. They didn't mean to get there. They accidentally got there. A lot of people will tell me they had the best intentions when they issued a policy or a procedure or even a consumer procedure, and it just backfired on them, and they've gotten to a horrible place and they need to get out. And how do they do that? And so that's what this class really, I think, encapsulates, is just overall culture. And in today's world, it's really complicated to, you almost feel like necessary to respond to everything because there's so much stuff that's going on. And I've often told people, you got to pick your battles wisely, obviously, but I think it's also important that when we talk about positive mindsets, that essentially what we're doing is that we are basically looking at what we need to do, the message that we need to put out. How are we projecting first before we can comment on anything, because are we in the right frame of mind, right? Or are we doing this as a knee-jerk reaction or what? So it all comes from me from like a positive mindset. So I want to go to this slide. This is a couple of quotes I've used in this class for years, and I wanted to go ahead and by the way, my PowerPoint looks like it's malfunctioning just a little bit. Give me 1 second. It just knocked out on me. Can y'all hear me? I'll get that right back up. But I can go over the quotes while I'm waiting for this to load back up. I apologize. Got a little, not sure what happened there. And let me see something real quick. So the quotes that we have for the class, basically action kills fear. We talk about that a lot in some of our classes. A lot of people feel powerless when they are essentially faced with something, and then they don't feel powerless. And I mean, they don't feel empowered, so they feel powerless. So I always say action kills fear. And so people say, what do you mean by that? And it's very simple. It's essentially the act of doing, like, what do I need to do to move against this, or to move in a positive direction, or take positive steps. And basically, a lot of people find that when they do the actions, they feel more accomplished, and then all the way to completion. Then of course that makes you feel accomplished, and then lo and behold, you're moving. You're taking that extra time to really enhance. Okay, good. Everybody said they can hear me. I appreciate that. And you're really taking the time to enhance what you need to do And I'm not sure what happened there. My PowerPoint literally just went out and then came back on. So we're going to put this up again, and I'll get back to this quotes. But action kills fear just means that basically, let's take a look down the road. What do I need to accomplish these steps? And I'm going to assume that I'm on the right one now. You guys let me know if I am. And so basically, that's what that means, right? And so I think we have to remember that when we say, you know, when we're faced with certain things in life, you know, like, what do I need to do with the problem that's in front of me? How do I conquer it? And what are the steps that I need to take so that we're taking action? Whenever we don't take action, whenever I talk to people about when they're frustrated, I work with people all the time, they're frustrated and go the way they were supposed to, whatever. It's usually because they're not taking the action, or they feel powerless to take action. And I get that a lot from employees, just so you know. Also, one of the other quotes here is, in a time of trouble, we need to learn how to light a candle and stop cursing the darkness. I run into a lot of people, and when I ask them, hey, looks like I'm back in presentation format. Okay, good. I'll talk to people and I'll say, hey, tell me about, you know, what's going on at work. And I'll use a open-ended question like that to engage any employee or even consumers. Like, what's your experience been like with our company? And immediately I find that people will say something like, oh, it's good, but, and then when I get the but, then it's this like string of negative things if they're not in a good place. And what's always amazing about the negative things is there's never a lack of them. We can always find things wrong with the situation. And then it's easy because nobody's perfect. And that's the most amazing thing I think I can say today is nobody's perfect. And that's a lot of people. I've had, you know, leaders tell me, I'm frustrated, this employee's not doing their job. And I'm like, well, have we shown them to do their job? Yes, over and over again. And again, you can hear the frustration. Why? Because there's no action. And again, so I think that that's important when we talk about mindset. Recognize that because we're human and we think this way and our minds kind of work and sometimes point out more negative than positive, we almost have to make a placeholder for positive every day and ensure, have we done it? And one of the things I would like to say, and you'll hear this in the presentation today, is encourage the behaviors you want more than you discourage the behaviors you don't. That's a huge statement. It's a lot to unpack. What behaviors am I encouraging? And I, you know, run into businesses all the time when they'll send out a memo or a letter to to their staff, and they'll say, hey, you need to do this, or it can lead up to disciplinary actions or termination. And I'm like, is that inspiring? You know, who's doing it right? You know, is there somebody doing it right? And they're like, yeah, well, Bob's always here on time. He's never late. Well, great. Let's put Bob in front of the group and let him know how he gets to work on time. What does he do? Let's make him let's push him up as the standard bearer. What's a perfect customer look like? You know, go through your whole business and find an opportunity. What does close to perfect look like, or really good look like, and then promote that. And you know, find ways to promote it. So again, encouraging the behaviors we want more than we discourage the behaviors we don't, I think is important, and that will be an overlay for this entire class. And then of course, if you are looking for something, I always tell people this too, you'll find it. So you've got to be really careful on what you're looking for. People say, what do you mean by that? If you're looking for negativity, I promise you will find it. If you're looking for bad things, you'll find it too. That's why when I hear people say they're conducting an audit or something of that nature, I kind of chuckle a little bit, because if you go in and you are auditing something 9 out of 10 times, you're going to find something wrong, because people are imperfect and they do imperfect things. So essentially what you're basically looking for is a break in process or a break in whatever, and you're going to find it if people, you know, didn't follow all the rules. So having said that, if you're looking for something, you will find it. I really believe that. That also means that we're mini antennas, and whatever we broadcast out to the world, we'll find other people like us. And we'll talk more about that in the presentation today. I always find it amazing. You know, I had one lady in one of the classes one time say, you know, I feel like I'm around a lot of negative people. And I said, well, what are you projecting? Didn't really like the answer I gave her. Came back a few weeks later though and self-admitted that in fact, I have been negative. I tend to, really, I let people know really quickly what they did wrong and how they did it. And I attract other people like that. And so it was, of course, it's a re-self set of how am I projecting and who am I attracting, and who is then those people unfortunately become your counsel, and now you're in a vicious cycle. And that's actually how bad cultures start at companies, because we all believe this is the way we do business, and then everybody, holds the flag. Unfortunately, it's a negative flag. And it can affect consumers. It can affect, the people that work there. It can affect the longevity of employees staying or leaving. And so, it's an interesting concept when you think about it. Like, you think, well, should I look for negative things or should I fix broken things? Sure, you should. But when you go looking for them, recognize that you will find that, and how you process that and what you do with the data is important. Because if you lash out or become angry or upset over it, then of course, that's the challenge, right? So moving forward, I wanted to bring some things up here as well. And I want to let you know that we live in a world where it's very important you understand, especially when watching the news cycles, that I've often said this. If you go to school for journalism, one of the things you will learn, and it may not be this exact phrase, but you will learn that dog bites man is not a news story. It's never a news story. Why? Because dogs biting men or females for that matter, or anybody, could potentially, happen any given day. And not that it will happen, but, it's not uncommon to hear about a dog biting someone. And so it's just something that's expected. But here's the deal. Change that sentence around, man bites dog. Now you've got a front page news story, film at 11, and you may even have experts that come on, have to justify their existence in life, who will tell you this is a trend, because they also had it happen in Chicago and New York and a few other places where men are biting dogs, and what's causing this problem. And by the end of that segment, you're going to be convinced that there might be men who run around biting dogs. And that's what news cycles do. They tend to push the extremes in societies, and unfortunately you're watching it and you may believe that things are that bad. But I will submit to you, even with all the things that have been going on in our nation recently, that most people went to work, they pay their taxes, they do the right thing, they don't anticipate in bad behaviors, and that's actually the story. The story is the majority of the country is doing the right thing. And I talk to people and they're like, oh, what are we going to do? This is frustrating. I'm like, well, first of all, let's sit down and have meaningful dialogue. That's the first thing. The second thing is, don't get upset, because there's a lot more people who are watching this like you are than are participating and being part of it. And people have to recognize that. I mean, even when you see, think of the most worst thing you can think that you've seen on TV, it's not everybody participating, everybody doing it. And that's the thing. We have to remember that. And so when we say what sells, well, sensationalism sells. That's always what you're going to see. So this is what I've always challenged people when they're talking about mindset or the current state of the world, even with COVID. One of the headlines I read yesterday is COVID cases are going up in America. There's some cities that it's really up in. And then you start digging into that story. It's very sensational, but then you start realizing that there's more testing centers, more people are being tested, and they expected to find more cases. But here's the good news story, which didn't get reported because it's not sensational and doesn't sell, is hospitalizations were down in some areas, and also less people are dying as a result because there's more treatments and options available, so people are making it through. And that's a really good story, but unfortunately doesn't get people to tune in. And so we've got to remember the sources where we get our data from, and even good or bad. We could believe, I had somebody tell me, well, they said retail sales were up, but my business was closed and we weren't making money. And so again, maybe you don't connect to that either, that story particularly, but again, I just share with you that pay attention to where you're getting data from, your inputs are coming from, because, very few people, and that's something too, very few people post normal behavior or report on it. What I mean by that is, if somebody just went to work today, that's never a news story. Like, hey, Bob went to work today and he was on time. Nobody ever reports that. So just remember those things. And I know it's easy to say, and a lot of people will say, Pat, well, isn't that pretty elementary and shouldn't everybody? Yes, but we forget because we get wrapped up in it. And the 24-hour news cycle is a thing. Your phone is constantly vibrating with alerts. You get emails from different groups and organizations that have agendas. You just got to pay attention, and slow down. Everybody does, quite honestly, and digest the facts and realize that, is it really like as bad as they're saying, or is this just a bad thing that happened? And that's really the challenge. And I find that people, when they're dealing with a lot of stress in life, when they're dealing with a lot of stressors, when they're dealing with a lot of, bad data, they tend to feel it. They tend to exhibit it. They feel like they're hopeless. And again, back to the inaction piece. I can't do anything about this because I don't know anybody doing it, or it's a virus or whatever is going on in the universe lately, and I feel powerless to that. So I maybe am a little bit more ornery than I normally am. I'm a little bit more sharp than I normally am. I'm a little bit more cut and dry than I normally am. I'm less conversational. Those things, it affects the way you behave with other people. And then again, some people get to the end of that rope and they look at it and they're like, man, I've really created a bad situation here, or maybe even participated in it because of my attitude. That's the problem with that. You get lost in it, and unfortunately it might become part of the problem. So moving forward here, I always say, what's the counterbalance, right? So when you consumed with bad or negative data, what's your counterbalance? And I always tell people that, like, you have to really think this out. And one of the things I like to do in my life, and of course it's Benjamin Franklin's idea, is a pro-con sheet. It's a wonderful way to sit down and realize, and I've done them with people. I've done them, like, people say, well, I don't like this policy, I don't like that policy. I'm like, well, what policy, what would you do if you had power? What would you do? How would you change this? I'm really interested in hearing that. Well, that alone takes the edge off and people start talking, right? Well, now they're talking, which makes them feel like they're at least participating in the process. And I'm not shutting them down, because, a militant dictator style behavior might be like, nope, you're going to accept this, just do it. Unfortunately, that never works, because then you become the evil in the world to those people. So the pro-con sheet for me is, what are the pros of doing this? What are the cons of doing this? And thinking that out before decisions are made, especially business decisions. Business decisions are going to affect consumers, business decisions that are going to affect employees. These are things you got to think about, because you've got to have answers. And unfortunately, you may not have all the answers, but you've got to have answers. And you can't just be like, we've always done business this way. A lot of time I'll ask management with a company, I'll say, well, why do we do this? Or why is this done this way? And they'll literally, the answer I get back is, we've always done it this way. Well, it's not working, and the fact that nobody called it out tells me that you don't have an open culture. And so I think that's important, right? With anybody in your life, keep an open dialogue. If you maybe, some people are very like, I don't want to hear it. I don't even want to know anything about that. But again, by not keeping the open dialogue, you're shutting people down. They're going to go find a way to get it out. One of the things that I like to bring this example into is, if you don't let consumers vent to you, if you don't give them a place to vent. I've had people say, well, I shut that person off my Facebook page because they were yelling or ranting or whatever. You know what? If you shut them off your Facebook page, at least you can help control the story there and open dialogue and show people how you react when people are uncivilized or whatever you want to call it, or particularly, uncivil. I think that, you them, that's even better. You know what? That is a horrible policy. We need to look at that. That would be refreshing. Most people don't do that. Most people will just shut the talk down and then move on. And I think that that's one of the things I think that we have to kind of focus in on when we're talking with consumers in particular, is just to kind of put that out there and say, hey, I'd like to give you an opportunity to vent here, because here's why. If you don't give them the opportunity to vent with you, if you don't try to contact those people, and by the way, a lot of people say, it's uncomfortable, I don't want to contact this person, they're going to yell at me. Well, yeah, but if you don't let them, give them that moment of venting and listen to them and show them that you're an open dialogue person, what's going to happen is they're going to go on Yelp, they're going to go on other places to give you reviews. And so again, how do you maintain a positive mindset will affect other people. If you don't maintain a positive, if you go negative with them, negative on negative never makes a positive. It never does. So if you don't allow people to vent, if you don't allow people to have open dialogue, they'll find places for those things. They're going to do them anyway. It might as well be on your terms. And so I've always, kind of mentioned that to people is, as part of having a mindset of positiveness means, and so unfortunately, sometimes I've got to deal directly with the negative. I can't ignore it. I can't let it go. I can't not hear it, because that's going to create the problem. But again, so the counterbalance. What's the counterbalance to negative data? Sometimes that's me. And then also, before I do things and make rules and laws or even choices or chances, I've got to sit down and do a pro-con sheet so I understand the pros and cons. If I'm knee-jerk with my decisions, if I just make calls on the fly, I may create something that I don't want, which is actually now I'm contributing to the problem. Moving along, a couple of things I want to point out about stressors. I see this all the time, and it's interesting when you start listening to some of the actual statistics on this, but we consume more data points in one day than a person in the 1800s is likely to consume in a lifetime. Think about that for a moment. They like literally one New York Times newspaper would be more information than most people would have gotten in their lifetime in the 1800s. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. And yet we're doing that on a daily basis. The phone in the hand and the phone connected to the internet has only worsened that, because this is the thing. With a constant need for data, the problem is that also in that void of data is because people want to be the first to a story. They want to be on top of the story. They want to be seen as the person who knows more than everybody else. Unfortunately, we've also got to deal with fake items or potentially bogus news stories that will come out, and those are out there too. So now it's not only just reading something and trusting it, it's reading something and almost verifying it. And there's companies working full-time, overtime on this topic. Facebook and Twitter and a couple other places are saying, hey, we're now going into it. And then there's arguments there too, because then you might think you're inaccurate. They may think you're inaccurate when you believe you are accurate. And so that creates a whole thing. But the problem is there's so much data coming out that it's typically not just one story. There's 5 different versions of the same story. And it's almost like an alternate universe. It's bizarro sometimes when you read a news story and then you go read another place's news story and they're 2 different stories. Or maybe they're the same angle but different spins, whatever, and that creates problems too, because it also creates friction. I could have read one story, you could have read the other. You and I are talking and we're like, no, that's factual. I read it. It's a reputable news source. Well, yeah, I got mine from a reputable news source too. Now we're at an impasse. What do we do? So I think the data that we consume and the way we consume it, and it's coming in so fast, is actually a huge problem. And sometimes it requires us just to walk away. I think a lot of people speak in absolutes. I think that gets us in trouble. It shuts down dialogue. If you have a different opinion about the same thing, I don't necessarily have to listen to everybody's opinion, but certainly if it's somebody I care for or a consumer or whatever, I got to care about them. So I want to, again, back to the point I made originally, which is just listen, right? Open dialogue is going to solve a lot of the problems. And again, not be a stressor, because when we fight people or debate people, or we claim that they're wrong and we're right, or we're right and they're wrong, or whatever, that's a stressor. That's going to be a stressor. It's going to put stress on relationships. It's going to put stress on, some companies take political stands. Some companies take, virtual stands. Some people take and make statements, and that's on them. But I've often said, sometimes you gotta just, decide, is this something I want to jump into, because there's pros and cons, and I may be taking the wrong stance for some of the consumers I have, or maybe I can do it privately, but I don't have to use the business to do it. There's all kinds of questions here, but the bottom line is, remember, any stand you take is going to find opposition. That opposition is going to be a stressor. So I always tell people that, make sure you're ready and you're firm in what you believe and those things, but also open dialogue, allow people to give you opposing views. That will reduce the stress levels, because again, there's a lot of stuff out there, and people are getting different sources, and unfortunately that leads to some confusion. So one of my favorite quotes on this is, especially in the consumer realm, comes from Donald Porter. He's actually the U.S. Airways. I think he was CEO at one point. But he said, and you may feel like you have to be perfect in this environment. However, customers don't expect you to be perfect. They just expect you to fix things when they go wrong. And I thought that was interesting, because the only way I can know that things went wrong and know what we did that the consumer believes were wrong is open dialogue and listening. If people say, hey, you guys did this, and I say, no, I didn't, and I'm very adamant about it, we may have a different opinion of that, but that's a stressor. Now we put a stressor in our relationship, as opposed to just listen. We know we're not perfect. We admit. I think it's important that companies admit we are a human company. We make human mistakes. How refreshing is that to hear? Think about that for a moment. I'm a human and I make mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes. Sometimes I do great things too. I knock the ball at the park. We do a great job. But if we ever let you down, let us know and we'll take care of it. That's the attitude that we have to take with our consumers and in life, I think, which is, hey, you know what? First of all, let's admit we're not perfect. And secondly, there's no reason to defend bad behavior. If we've done something wrong, we're going to own it. And we're going to be outraged with you. We're not going to be outraged against you. And that's a philosophy I like to call getting on the consumer's side, or getting on your friend's side. You can't, a lot of people like to play devil's advocate, and I say that's wrong. They'll say, oh, well, what if this happens? Or what if that? Look, if somebody's upset about something, get on their side and say, I understand, that you feel this way. Tell me more about that. I'd like to know more about why you feel that we wronged you, or we did the wrong thing, or, because again, maybe we gave the wrong impression, and I don't want to do that. And then finally, that's not the experience that we want you to have. So let me give you the right experience now. Let me win you back. Give me an opportunity, because I admit that we're not perfect and we make mistakes. And again, how refreshing, I think, in business to hear this, and in life. So again, I think Donald Porter was on to something here with U.S. Airways. Moving on, one of the things that I like to share with people too is, how are you controlling what you can control? And that's, I've often said with people, do you have a gratitude journal? As an experience of that is, when somebody says something nice to you, or when you get nice notes from consumers, do you have, when you want to call somebody out for something, just the positive things that have happened, I just write them down. I make notes of them. I can go back and then tell people, hey, I wanted to let you know, I know we messed up, but let me share these experiences that we've had together and what we've accomplished. When we hit our goals or quotas or whatever we're striving for, I make note of that, all the positive things, so that we can go back and tell a story, so that when things do go wrong, I can tell you 50 positive things that happened with this relationship, as opposed to trying to remember it on the fly. Sometimes victories are not celebrated as loudly as they should be, and sometimes things that go broken are overextended, and people get very animated when things go wrong, as opposed to when things go right. Can you imagine if people got just as excited about things that go wrong, right, as they do when they go wrong? I would love to hear, you guys did a great job, woohoo! But unfortunately, that's typically not human nature. But again, I think that's very important that, just make sure you're documenting all the good things you do. Look at all the good things you do, all the good things that your employees do, that the people in your life do. And then if you need to reflect on that before you make a decision, or when you think someone's mistreating you, go back and look at their work, the body of work in the gratitude journal, in your body of work in the gratitude journal, and you may start having a different impression. Maybe the world feels like it's falling apart right now, but every interaction I've had with James, as an example, then if it's the person named James, obviously, then I go back and say, you know what, I've had a lot of good interactions with James, but this, that's why I need to let him off, and I need to understand he's not perfect, and let me just bring my emotion to the table, let him know what I'm feeling, but again, from a different perspective. I'm not going to, hammer somebody, for lack of a better term, for something that went wrong just on one thing. The next thing is treat yourself to some self-care days. A lot of people forget that, especially when we work. I've often joked I work 80 hours a week, so I never have to work 40 again. People laugh at that. Typically, I say that because, it means that, Sometimes I got to work a lot of hours, especially I would say between July and December for me are very, 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 very busy months. I have a lot of work on my plate, so it's easy for me to become overwhelmed. But I've got to remember in there too, I've got to take some self-care days. I've put off in the past, of course, before I started living this philosophy, I put off medical appointments. I'd put off, sick days because, more important things, had to be done than me being out. But I started to have to learn to trust my staff. I started to have to learn to trust the people around me, and I needed to learn to ask for help. That reduced my stress levels big time, because if I feel like I'm the only person that can do the things that need to get done, I'm actually hurting myself, because then I feel like if I'm not there or I go down, then literally there is no plan. So empowering people, asking for help, letting people wow you or show you what they can do, or allowing people to step up and take some of that work when you do need a day off, I think is huge. And that has changed. I can tell you that's a single factor that's changed my entire organization's work-life balance, because when we need a day off, we take it, and we don't fear that things are going to get done wrong or improperly, because the staff is trained and we trust them. And we assume positive intent, by the way. When things go wrong, we assume positive intent. We know nobody came to work today saying, I want to screw up. They came to work to do the right job. Unfortunately, bad things happen, so we just get out of it. I had a boss, and he says, we're not delivering babies. We're doing this. And I started laughing, because, it's not as complicated sometimes as we make it seem, or life-altering as we make it seem. It's a mistake, and it can be corrected. Most mistakes made in business can be corrected. Most mistakes made in your life can also be corrected. Start every morning strong. What does that mean? Simple. Project positive. Think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and the things you're going to knock out. I particularly like to use a to-do list, and then if I don't finish things on that day, I move the to-do list items to the next day. And as I knock items out, I feel very accomplished. In the morning, it might look like a lot of stuff, but I know from past experience, because I'm in a routine, and that I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to make time for it. And if it gets overwhelming, I can ask for help, because if it becomes more than like 20 items, I probably need to ask for some help. And I think that's awesome. Also, avoid spreading gossip. People who participate in gossip, it is psychologically proven that they start wondering about how you're talking about them. It starts implanting seeds. It starts making them feel like maybe you do this to me and things of that nature, and it can only hurt your personal reputation. So spread less gossip, or try not to gossip about a situation like somebody who's fired from a company, or a consumer. You notice that their wedding ring's missing. I've actually went to a place one time, and they were all gossiping about what might have happened, and it turned out that the person just forgot their wedding ring in a bathroom somewhere and lost it. It had nothing to do with their marriage and trouble or all the things that people were talking about. So again, you can let things get out of control, and it's when a person found out, they were kind of hurt by the whole discussion, and rightfully so. So again, I share that with you because, just avoid that. Now, what can you do? What can you do more of? Jokes, appropriate jokes. Have fun with people. Have fun days, like in your life. We do you've heard of like Hawaiian shirt day at work, things like that. They're funny. People think they're gimmicky, but you know what? It's loose, and we have like casual days where we say, hey, we even ask permission. We say, hey, we've all been like dressed in suits for like a month. Can we have a jean day? And they're like, yes, and the client will say yes, and they were looking for it too. And then just lighten up the mood basically, and then have some fun, crack jokes at your own expense. But don't make sure they're obviously not something that's going to offend people. But again, I often joke that, I'm going to be late for a meeting. I'll say, well, me, I probably overtalked on the last meeting. So, and people will get that and have fun with it. But the bottom line is that don't be bashful about having fun, laughing. It's contagious, and it makes people feel good. Also, take real breaks. A lot of people take a break and they immediately go to their phone. I have research and data on top of data that shows, as an example, if you watch TV or play on your phone while you eat, you feel less full, so you may actually overeat if you're multitasking while you eat. And so what I've done for me personally, for like a lunch, I'll actually go outside and if I can, if it's not raining, and I'll just eat a quick bite outside with no electronics, no hardware. And people will say, well, man, when do I do that? Well, make time for that too. If you want to check your phone, make time for it. But don't do it while you're supposed to be enjoying a break and unplugging. Because if you think about it, if you went from work to phone and then from phone back to work, where did you unplug? So again, take real breaks. Take a walk. Like, go out in the sun. That's another thing too. If you're inside all day, go out in the sun. Go enjoy the fresh air. There's a lot of rainy days, and you won't be able to do that. Trust me. So appreciate the ones you have. Have something to look forward to after work, meaning, plan little events for yourself that if you get through this day and you get through the work, at 5 o'clock, you're going to take off today. I've had a lot of people say, well, I work till 7 every night, Well, make one day, take off early, if you have the power to do that, give your employees an opportunity. If they've finished their workload, give them the opportunities to leave or do something fun or order food, just something to look forward to. That makes people want to be here and participate, and they recognize that you care. And also, I would say meditation. Some people say pray. That's fine either way, but make time for that. Make time for yourself. Just make time to project positive thought, to maybe say nice things to people, in your head, so you can build up, the positiveness. Because again, we're inundated with negative things. If we're going to make time for those, and we're going to watch the news, and we're going to do all of those things, then we should make time for positives too. And I've had people say, I was telling you, if you watch the evening news, you've made time for negative things. You may not feel that way. You feel like, well, I'm just watching the news. I'm telling you, you're going to hear negative things, a lot of negative things. Usually it's 15 negative things and 1 positive thing. At the end, they lose some positive, good news story at the very end and make you feel like you did something productive. Unfortunately, the 55 bad stories totally outbalance the 1 good news story at the end. So sharing that with you, if you're going to make time for negative things, make time for positive things. Now, this isn't a call to stop watching the news. You obviously need to be plugged in. You need to know what's going on, but recognize it for what it is. It's a lot of negative information. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it's positive, but again, vast majority of the studies that we see, all the news stories do not typically have a happy ending. So anyway, moving along, we want to surround yourself, when you talk about surround yourself with the right people, it starts with how you're attracting people and what you're putting out. So if you are broadcasting negative messages, or if you're a negative person, or you're a person who constantly rants and openly, or you say negative things, or you're constantly, telling people that, shutting people down out of debate, you're going to attract people who do the same or don't mind that you did. And you might lose some of the thought, the great thinkers that should be in your life that can help you put things in better perspectives. There's a lot of studies that show you're a sum average of the 5 people you hang out with. And what I like to say, if that study is accurate, then let's assume right now, if your friends are negative people, or the people that you have in that circle are negative, chances are you're negative too. And so that's a challenge, because you really got to do a little self-reflecting here. So again, back to that, you attract what you put out. If you put out negative, you will get negative. And of course, that's the challenge, is being able to call yourself out on that, maintain a positive mindset. Again, gratitude journals, telling people positive things, looking at the entire situation before you make a judgment call, recognize where you're getting the sources of data from. All those things when you start checking those things off, you actually might get to a more positive outcome. And so that's huge. So anyway, yep, and somebody wrote in the chat, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Indeed, I think that's very accurate. So moving along, when we get to this next slide here, random acts of kindness. This is one of my favorite things to do, because it's not done. So actually on your calendar, I highly suggest this, and I've actually done this. If you take and make it a point to say, do, comment, leave positive feedback for people. It will come back. I've had people say, Pat, how do you maintain such a positive mindset? Actually, people say that to me. They say, Pat, I can always come to you for good, solid, positive advice. And in most cases, I just listened. I didn't even really advise. I let them come to their own conclusions. So, but I made time for that. If someone comes in early to work all the time, compliment them. We must encourage the behaviors that we want more than we discourage the behaviors we don't. A lot of companies that I work with, one of the first things I look at is their culture, and their culture is do this or else. Or if you come in late, you're fired. If you come in late 3 times, you're fired. I walked into a training room one time, and there's this big list of things on the wall. It said, don't be late, and no talking, raise your hand to be recognized. It had all these like rules, and I literally looked at the trainer. I said, are we in kindercare here? Because this looks like a list that you would put in a preschool. It doesn't look like in a list of adult learners. This is not how we talk to adult learners. Why don't we tell them what they can do? As an example, it says you can only smoke in your breaks is one of the rules on here. Why don't we show them where they can smoke and tell them that they can only, this is what places they can smoke on their breaks. Do you see the difference in that verbiage? The verbiage is mega important. If I feel like people are telling me all the time, no, 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 then they become the evil in the world. And that's the problem. When you tell people no, 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 they don't see the things that could happen because you told them no. They only see you telling them no. And so you've basically inserted yourself into the position of this authority figure that when they want to rebel, when they want to act out, you're the target. And so you have to encourage the behaviors that you want. So make time for that. When people do come in early, if you want people to come in early, then when people do come in early, compliment them. If you've got good consumers, do they know it? One of the things I like to tell people all the time is if you've got like the top 10% of your consumers, if you're not sending them, Christmas gifts and birthday gifts and random cards through the year, why not? These people are spending a lot of money with you. They've been good consumers. Why not let them know? And then they go tell people, you won't believe this. I got a fruit basket out of the clear blue sky from that place down the street. They may not buy from you immediately, but the stories they tell about your wonderfulness is a positive thing. I've had people post on like public things for me, like at different locations. They'll say, well, Patrick came in and he really pumped the group up, or he did this, or he did that. They're complimenting what they think I did. And I've often said, I didn't do it. You listened to the message. Back to you, congratulations. But when people see positive stuff, unfortunately, it's so rare. They tend to talk about that because it is rare. So again, make time, literally, on your calendar. Like, I'm going to compliment this person. If you do that every day, 2 or 3 times a day, you're going to feel good, because what usually happens when you compliment somebody, if you call somebody and say, hey, I just want to thank you for all the hard work you do, out of the clear blue sky. First of all, they might think you're dying or something, because people don't do that. It's unfortunate. I've often, in one of my classes, I actually teach a relationship class, which has this piece in it as well. And I've said, I want you to think of somebody you absolutely love. And then I want you to think that, unfortunately, today is the last day you're going to see them. What would you say? You got 15 minutes, go. And, man, a lot of emotion comes out of that class. And then I look at the class and I say, now I'm going to indict you all, because how many times have you said that to those people? And by the way, the reason you would want to say that to those people is because we're not all guaranteed the next moment. So if you didn't say those things, you'll spend the rest of your days regretting it. I don't know about you, but when I leave this earth, I don't want anybody that I care about ever thinking, what did they think of me? Or maybe I'm doubting what they thought of me, or, no, they all know. I promise you, my kids, my wife, my family know exactly how I feel, because I tell them often. I make time to do it. And I recommend you do too, but it doesn't stop there. It should also extend to the consumers that buy from us, that do what we want them to do. It should also extend to the people in our lives that we work with, that we're glad. Think about the people you work with. Are you really glad they're there? Then tell them. Why wouldn't you? Let them know how much they mean to you, and that when you come to work, you look forward to seeing them. The UPS guy who comes in every day, and you've got, let him know how valued he is or she is. Whoever it is in your life, just again, make time for it. We don't do that enough. It's a shame. And I will tell you, unfortunately, on a deathbed, because, nobody ever says, I wish I would have fought more. I wish I would have said more negative things. I promise you, it's always the other way. They wish they would have had more time to say the things they wanted to say. Don't wait. Do it now. It make you feel good. And usually when you give people good feedback, guess what happens? They feel compelled to give you something positive too. And so you'll feel good, they feel good, and you're putting out a positive message. What could possibly go wrong? Nothing. People will appreciate you, and you'll appreciate them. Moving on. We talked about encouraging the behaviors you want. Remember that. If you could, seriously, take that and stencil it somewhere in your office or excuse me, on your computer, in your life, just anywhere. Live by it. How can I encourage the behaviors I want rather than discouraging the behaviors I don't? Telling people no is easy. It's easy to do. Giving people a list of no's. Problem is that what does success look like? Would it be better if we pointed out what success looked like and then how you can achieve success too? I mean, it would be beautiful. And if we encourage that, school systems, I think, would flourish in that environment, because instead of just saying, go study, let's find out how Sally studies so well. What's her habits? Nobody ever discussed that with me in high school, by the way. I look back and nobody ever discussed that with me. There were people in school acing math. I struggled. I sat there and I would man, how do they do it? But nobody ever answered the question, and I never asked it out loud. Shouldn't we as leaders be the people stepping in and answering those questions? That comes from encouraging the behaviors we want and discouraging the behaviors we don't less. Also, encouraging other leaders to do the same. I challenge my leaders on my team to do the same. I ask them, how have you encouraged the behaviors you want? I ask my kids that, if we're being quite honest. So it's something I carry in my home. It's something I carry to my work. Again, how are we encouraging the behaviors that we want? Moving on. Basically, when we talk about controlling your language too, remember, you attract what you put out. So if you put out negative things, you're going to attract negative people. Plus, the language you use every day, both in thought and spoken word, has a cumulative effect on how you feel about yourself, your work, and those around you. I've often said, if your mirrors in your bathroom could talk, the ones you get ready in front of in the morning, or maybe that's another mirror in the house, or maybe it's a mirror on the back of your door, wherever mirror you use to get ready in the morning, if it could talk, what would it say? Most people tell themselves very horrible stories in getting ready in the morning. They start the morning completely off wrong. I'm late. I don't have enough time. My hair doesn't look good. Whatever the situation is, we love to criticize. We start our days out that way. Here's the deal. Set yourself a reminder wherever you get ready in the morning not to start that way. Make a commitment to yourself that you're not going to be your worst critic today, that you're going to be your biggest supporter. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, if you pay attention to how many times you do it, you will see quickly that you are your largest detractor and you're the person that's standing in your way most of the time. Encourage the behavior you want, even with yourself. Moving along. Decide, carry a positive attitude with you. Decide that your reactions to known problems ahead of time, meaning when you've had when people are late, how am I going to respond? When consumers aren't following the process, how am I going to respond? Again, thinking those things out ahead of time will not put you on a spot. When most people are on a spot, it's a fight or flight moment. And typically, unfortunately, most people either do not make the call, do not make the tough choice, or they actually become combative. So if you think these things out ahead of time, so look at the top 5 things in your life that constantly come up. How am I going to respond to them going forward in a positive manner that encourages the behavior I want? Will give you that extra time you need when you don't need it, when you don't need it, but when you do need it, you'll have it because you've already got the script in your head. Don't rely on outside sources for positivity. A lot of people do that. They feel like they need it. I'm telling you, folks, that is an ice cream cone. If you need people to tell you anything about how wonderful you are, how great you are, you need to do that. You need to do that for yourself. You need to realize how special you are. You need to pump up your own attributes. That's why the gratitude book is so awesome. You kind of go back and look at it and see all the accomplishments that you've done and how successful you've been, how smart you are, and there's always something that somebody's done that if they wouldn't have been there would have been a problem, or they saved the day. You know, go back to those moments and realize you can self-motivate yourself. If you're looking for motivation from other folks, those are ice cream cones. They will melt. They'll become very messy, and the problem is you'll need another one. They never last, and so that's why I call them ice cream cones. Assume responsibility and choose your response. Again, we are humans. We're a human company. We're human people. We make human mistakes. Perhaps I made a mistake. I'd like to hear why you thought that, and then I'll own what I want. And by the way, even if we didn't do anything wrong and people believe we did, we can say, you know what? Sounds like you and I got off on the wrong foot, or I put the wrong foot forward. What I'd like to do is put the right foot forward now and correct your view of this and try it over. Can we hit a reset button? I've had to do that with a few people in my life, and I'm telling you, it is magical. Nobody ever attacks it like that. They always, you know, well, you're wrong, I'm wrong, and we're wrong, or you were wrong first. Who cares? If somebody has a negative opinion of me, my job is to change it. If I can't change it, then so be it. But I should at least listen to why they have an opinion. Even if I inherently disagree with them, that's fine. I need to at least hear it so that I can be cognizant of it potentially with other people. And also, maybe I came across wrong. Maybe it's a perception issue. Maybe it's a comprehension issue, whatever the bottom line is. But I need to understand what those things were so that I can respond. And of course, refusing to take responsibility for your actions is not taking control of the situation at all. And it kills the positive attitude immediately. Do you have a mission statement? You should. Do you have core values? You should. And I'm not talking about for your company. I'm talking about for personal. One of my core values is assume positive intent. That's not a company one. I don't have it anywhere in my company. Just assume positive intent. When I approach an issue, rather than being accusatory in tone, let me just find out what happened first so that I can actually blame people for what happened or pin it on them rather than assume that they're part of the guilty party or perhaps did it with vengeance or spite or smite or whatever. I should at least give them an opportunity to explain. So assume positive intent and also seek to understand first. Those are two of my personal core values. I've written them down and I call myself out on them all the time. I let people I know in my life that that's what I'm trying to do. And if I fail, let me know. I want them to know so they can call me out on it, because if I'm not living up to those expectations, shame on me. And also, I'm going to ask them to live by the same expectations too. So when I do wrong, I would appreciate you seeking to understand first and assume positive intent. Also, mission statements, simple. I often joke about this, but I said my mission statement for a long time was, I want even the undertaker to be sad at my funeral. Everybody should have a positive opinion. They're sad to see me go, or sad to see me leave a room. If not, then I've done something horribly wrong and I need to work on that. So that means that I need to make sure that all of my encounters with everybody are as pleasant as possible. And the ones that aren't pleasant, I need to do whatever I can to resolve it within reason. And if I can't, well, then I simply need to, leave that situation, and knowing that I exhausted every opportunity to work on it and not write it off. And so that's really the kicker. So having said that, that's the important part there. Now, one of the concepts I live by personally, and I want to share this with you, and you don't really, the music's actually better. I want to see if I can actually get that on real quick. But basically, it's called the 212 degrees. If you get an opportunity, you can go back on YouTube. It's all over the place, but it's a philosophy. I'm going to let the video speak for itself, and then I'll come back and address it. It's just music, so if you can't hear the music, if it's not playing for some reason, don't worry about it. The screens is what you need to read are the most important. So I'm going to go ahead and play this now, and I'll come back and I'll tell you my thoughts on this and then how I live it. All right. So what do you guys think about that? So hopefully you guys enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed bringing that to you. A mentor of mine shared that with me many, many moons ago, and it haunted me for a long time. I would think to myself, you know, we actually got it into our culture where people say now, are you 211? Are you 211ing it? You know, or are you 212ing it? And basically, what the whole point of this is you don't have to do great things every day. You simply, remember what I said in the very, very beginning of this, action kills fear. I've got to take the first step. A journey of 1,000 steps, they say, you know, starts with one step. I must take the step. Every step is one more step closer to completion, and that is the extra degree. Most people stop, unfortunately, at 211. They do not go the extra degree, or you might have heard the extra mile. People say there's less competition in the extra mile. Why? Because most people do their bare minimum. If 5 pizza places are doing delivery, free delivery, everybody's doing free delivery, how do you stand out? Doing the extra is going to make it, as crazy as the Papa John's peppers are in the box, there are some people who demand them. Other pizza companies don't do that. So that's their little niche. It's a one little degree better than if I get 5 pizzas delivered to me, Papa John's is the one with peppers. It just sets them apart. It's 1 degree. It's something small, but again, sets them apart. And it's so simple to do. And so a lot of people get wrapped up in they got to do these big grandiose things to make a difference. No, you don't. Sometimes just telling people nice things works. So get your team on the same page, hold them accountable. Are we 212 in it today, which is creating some steam, or are we 211 in it, which is just going to do the bare minimum and maybe float us home? With that in mind, I'll take any questions you guys have, if you have any. If not, it's a great day to have a great day, as I like to say. And I don't see any questions at this time. Let me go ahead and put my other screen up too, which is my information on it. Again, it's been my pleasure to do the class today. My name is Patrick Arcement. I'm on Twitter. For every once in a while, I'll get in an inspirational mode and start tweeting nice things out that at least put some positive things in your feed, and my email address below. And of course, I work with IRSC. If you've, they have some great classes, that are offered through this program. I highly recommend them, and tell your friends, and certainly keep in the loop on what's going on, because we've got some great classes that are out there that some great presenters offer, and I know you'll be inspired by them as hopefully you were today. And thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that immensely. Any questions, comments, concerns? If not, we are right at 3:01, and I thank you for attending today's class. Have a great day.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Patrick. And I would like to invite everybody to join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. We're going to be having another great webinar. You can sign up for all webinars through the VBRC if you go to your EDC, that's youredc.com/VBRC. That's where you'll find the registration links for all webinars hosted through CCTI, St. Lucie EDC, the Florida Small Business Development Center, and our great partners and instructors. Thank you again, Patrick.
Thank you. Have a great day. And again, a great day to have a great day, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
My pleasure.